Hi, this is Bang Sane. So I am coming over, well, I guess not live, but with information about the server transfer. So basically, I know that a lot of newer servers want to know about how that works. I'm going to bring up an older screenshot that I actually had back in the day. Um, so regular slots are going to have 60 slots. Medium is going to have 40. Advanced is going to have 5. Elite is going to have 1. I know this is a little bit confusing, so I'm going to try to explain this. Regular is any slot for a player that isn't very strong. It can be a farm, it can be like a huge gap in between that and medium. So, in terms of season 1, typically a lot of players are not going to be that strong. Now, there are exceptions because the way that server transfers would work is based on the strength of your bracket. So, some brackets might be stronger than others. Maybe some brackets might have like a super huge like mega whale player, right? Or several of them. So if let's say the average player strength happens to be significantly higher in that server bracket, then obviously the numbers are going to change on what's considered elite, advanced, medium, and regular. So that's why if you're looking for solid answers on what is a regular player, medium, advanced, elite, in most cases this would depend on the strength of the bracket. So the stronger the strength of the bracket, the wider the scale this would be in terms of what would be considered medium or advanced or elite player. So the way that my bracket typically worked, in the beginning at the very least, is that a T10 player could be usually considered between advanced or elite for season 1. Starting around, during the transfer between season 1 and season 2, there's a transfer season, so T10's typically between advanced and elite. For the transfer season between season 2 and 3, there's a huge gap now. Because now, if you're a weaker T10, for my bracket, at the very least, they could still be considered medium tier. So you might not necessarily even be considered an advanced or elite tier as a T10 player now. You could still be considered a medium, like a higher end medium tier player. So the scale on medium is huge because there is a low medium tier where you could have maybe a formation of like 100 and I think it's like 150 mil power score main formation, and then you can have like main formations as strong as 200 something mil, right? So for me, my main formation is like 200 and something mil, but my secondary is like 140 mil, I believe, approximately. But I'm still considered a medium. So even though the overall power score of a player might indicate some attributes, what you should focus on is in particular this. So forget troop power, because that just means a player has a bunch of troops in their base. What you want to focus on is tech power, hero power, and mod vehicle power. These are actually what determines if you're going to be a regular tier player, medium tier player, advanced tier player, and elite tier player. Your true power score, quite frankly speaking, doesn't really matter, because your tech power score, hero power score, and vehicle mod power are actually what does determine tier. So, what would I recommend doing before the actual transfer event? Well, that's entirely up to you. In my opinion, I think that if you're trying to transfer out to another server, maybe don't get T10 yet if you're about to, because that may increase your rank already and make you go from maybe a medium tier to advanced tier to like elite tier, right? servers don't typically have a lot of elite tier positions, as they only have one. So if you're trying to transfer out, that would become very problematic for you. I would recommend, if your transfer season is soon, not to do that immediately, as it would be better to try to, I'll show you. Save your badges from getting the final slot on D10, as this might boost it to a really bad degree. So the other aspect is, how do you bring players over for a server transfer event? That is a very good question. You want to be able to try to keep in contact with servers outside of, players outside of your server. So in this case, you need to message servers in your around your server bracket to be able to keep in contact with them, to try to keep a good relationship with them, be able to have them have an idea that your server is at least on the friendlier scale, right? Because if they have zero clue what your server is about, why would they transfer to your server, right? As an example, some servers in my bracket, they have a lot of people leaving that server. So in this case, as an example, server 61 is leaking a lot of players. Server 63 isn't leaking a huge number of players, but big enough to be a concern, in my opinion, right? People might have different opinions here or there, but I think that, to me, I would be concerned about it, just because I'm not going to specify what is happening, because I don't want to quite put it out there yet, but there will be a big exodus in server 61 and 63. 55, from what I've been hearing, is going to change a lot. I know of, like, for me, I already know 3 different clans in server 55. No, actually, maybe 4 clans. 3 major clans, 1 minor clan, that will be leaving in droves. One of those major clans are almost like that I'm mentioning, like between the 3 of them, like 3 major, 1 minor. Technically it's 2 major, 1 minor, because one of them is still on the fence about whether or not they'll move. But they're pretty sure they're not going to be staying in the server, but they're not 100% sure, as it also depends on the server merger that's happening. But they're pretty sure that they're not going to be staying in server 55, basically. So, this is from my understanding. 52 might have a huge exodus, but it depends on the merger. 51 is so far relatively loyal to their server, although they don't have a lot of active players and a lot of active clans anymore. It's pretty loyal to their server. So sometimes loyalty is actually more beneficial than just like having a strong server. So as an example, server 61 is in fact stronger than 51. But 61 is going to be leaking a ton of players. So that's why it's like, in that circumstance, 51 ends up becoming more beneficial for 50 to merge with, just because at least we know that 51 is more secure as a server than if we merge with something like 61 or 63. 61 might stay with us if 50 merges with 61, but I actually don't know, because, like, from what we've talked about between my clan and several different leaders who are in contact with all these servers, 2 out of the 3 major clans in 61, we've talked with 2 of them. The third one, not particularly as much, that we've remained in contact with. but I don't see them staying if two out of three major clans leave, right? So if they stay, then that server is going to be not the same at all. Another thing I do want to mention is when you end up talking to or having or communicating with many different players from other servers, you should keep in mind that these players are not just players in other servers, but you want to try to keep in good relations with many of these other players, even if they are your alliance versus, right? The reason being is that you have no idea if that player might want to transfer to another server one day, and whether or not you want to have a type of reputation that might not be the best. There have been cases where in many stronger servers, some of the clans are actually incredibly toxic. And this actually prevents people from wanting to join that server. As an example, in one server, there are multiple clans from that server that are well known. I'm not going to mention which one because they have a mega whale in there, and I feel like if I actually put this out there, I probably would get like smashed pretty badly. So I'm not going to put out that server's actual number just in case. But I will state what they have done repeatedly to not just my clan but multiple different clans. If you're trying to gather for a treasure, in most cases, most clans understand this when you message them, and then they'll stand down and not attack you while trying to, reach a treasure, and they'll be polite about it. It's a form of respect, basically. Most clans also do not hit troops and formations outside of gathering resources, as an example. This again is a sign of respect. So if a lot of different clans or players from those particular servers doing this, or they're not giving off the exactly decent impression of what their server is like, you will have a lot of players that would not have a very good impression of what those players might be, right? So this is very important to the discussion of server transfers because it's also about reputation building about your server. So if a particular clan, or even your clan, if someone else's clan that you see is doing that, you do not want that type of reputation staying with you, as that can stain the reputation of your server. This is really, really bad, because server mergers and transfers will eventually happen to every server. Mergers are actually even more hardcore, because if a server views that if they merge with you and your server has a more toxic reputation, those players immediately might decide that they feel that they want to transfer to somebody else. That's why I state that discussing with other players and relationship building is one thing. Trying to avoid the type of reputation that can really not make people want to transfer to your server is another thing. You want to be able to build a reputation of your server that reflects a good light. If that doesn't happen, then you're in very deep trouble. A lot of players that are transferring over to server 50, I can't really name drop them right now because a lot of this is under wraps. Many of these T10s that are joining S50, they come from servers that are significantly stronger than S50. I'm just going to put that out there, that server 50 is not as strong as some of my viewers might think. But I don't know how many of you actually think that we're strong, but we're not necessarily strong. I would say we're active as a server. Sometimes we assist each other as a server, not always, but we assist each other enough to try and help, right? Again, we do bicker sometimes, but not to any as big as an extent as what happened to server 49. They don't exist anymore because they merged with 41, but back in the day, it led to one of the biggest collapses in a server in our entire bracket. What happened was that there was a consistent server war between two major fan factions, and this slowly destroyed their entire server. So being able to communicate not just outside your server but inside your server is actually really good as well. Having the type of reputation where your server doesn't just immediately go super nuclear button warlord style antics is a good thing. So some players might be interested in having a war-torn server. Most aren't. So so again, like, not everybody wants peace in a server, but I would assume that the majority of players want to have a more peaceful server that doesn't have 24/7 wars. So make sure that you vet that player decently. If something seems off, probably is. Outside of that, let me know if you have any more questions. Again, I'm going to go over the numbers again. "60 regular slots, 40 medium slots, 5 advanced, 1 elite." Again, this would, for the power score and everything else in the math behind it, it all depend on what season that you're in, how strong your bracket is. The stronger your bracket, the wider the scale of tiers, right? So newer servers, again, not always, but for the most part, are gonna have T10s be at either elite or high advanced. They're not always gonna be at elite level, but it's between these two sections. Players usually within transferring between servers and are going from season 2 to season 3. Usually, typically what happens is that a lot of the advanced players, now their tier is going to be medium. So just make sure that you have the correct number of migration tickets. I'm going to mention that too. So I should have mentioned this before. I've only talked about slots. I didn't quite talk about transfer tickets. I should mention that just because this has a lot to do with how do you end up transferring. Well, I am going to tell you. That's called a migration pass. Each one of these are worth about 5k glory points. Depending on the tier would depend on how many migration passes you need. Before, I think that at some point it was cheaper for one particular tier. I forgot which one it was, but I don't know if they increased the cost. But I believe that regular should be not 5 but 10 passes. Sorry, 10 passes. Medium I think is 15. Advanced I think is like 25, and I think elite is 40 or 45. I could be wrong, but this is, as far as I remember, what the number of transfer passes that you need. Make sure that you buy many transfer passes as you could, because one day maybe you forget that you upgraded to T10 and you happen to need a transfer pass, but then you forgot that by going to T10 you increase your power significantly, which increases your rating, whether or not that's low, medium, advanced or elite, it's a good idea to kind of uh, buy these transfer passes, because if you don't, this can lead to problems. Anyways, again, this is Bang Sane. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and have an amazing rest of your week as well. Bang Sane signing off. If you have any questions, feel free to message me in server 50. Again, I should be able to, if I have time, get back to you and answer questions that you may have. I know that many players have questions about the server transfers and what to do. So hopefully everything goes well. And have a great day, and Bang Sane signing off.